Sensual American folk magic with a dash of Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli style spirits and gods. This book is a journey of self discovery that uses witchcraft as a way to fight back against the patriarchal Puritan culture of the 1600s. Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brom is a fantastic book about both magic and horror. It follows Abatha, a young woman who just moved to a Puritan colony from London. Unfortunately, she didn't do this by choice. She was sold as part of a marriage agreement by her father. There is a silver lining in this in the fact that the man Abatha was forced to marry, Edward, does seem to love and respect her, and he allows her to pursue her interests within a certain limit because the other people in town are already weary of Abatha. As a way to make extra money, she's been making these little charms and selling them to the other women in town as a way to give them luck or help them catch the eye of a boy they may have a crush on. This is a Puritan colony in the 1600s, so some of the more pious townfolk and some of the church leaders consider this behavior one small step away from being straight up witchcraft. Abatha is also very outspoken, so she clashes with the Puritan culture as well. Unlike everyone else in town, she wasn't raised here and she didn't choose to move here. She was ripped away from the big city of London and now she's forced to live as a Puritan wife. Abatha and her husband Edward own a small farm just outside of town. The land is actually owned by Edward's brother, and they've been making payments with their crops to slowly own the land themselves. The farm itself isn't on the most fertile ground, so they've been struggling to grow crops and get by, but they are just one payment away from being free of debt and owning the farm outright. I won't go into the details about how this happens, but Abatha becomes a widow, and now she's burdened with the responsibility of bringing in this final harvest to pay off the debt to Edward's brother all on her own. At the same time, a mysterious creature known as Slewfoot, or as the townsfolk call him, the devil, starts to appear around her farm. Slewfoot is tall, he has the body of a man covered in fur, and he has the head of a goat. Abatha and Slewfoot start to form a bond, and he gives her some much needed help around the farm. Although Abatha is unsure about accepting help from someone who might actually be the devil, she doesn't really have any choice because at this point, any kindness from anyone is a miracle. With the death of her husband and the growing suspicion of the townfolk because of her already suspicious behavior, she's running out of people she can actually trust and rely on. All of this is going on with the ticking clock of the harvest deadline coming up, and she needs to make this payment or she'll lose the farm and worse, end up in servitude to her brother-in-law. That's the basic setup of the book, and that's all I'll go into about the plot so I don't accidentally spoil anything. I actually went into this book completely blind, and I ended up really loving it. I think my girlfriend actually bought this book on a whim just based off of the cover, and it does include some beautiful illustrations of the characters inside. The way magic is described in this book is very folksy and extremely sensual. There's nothing overtly sexual in the text, but the way some of the magic casting scenes read, it does feel like a magical sex scene. I thought this was really well done and such an interesting way to depict how it might feel if you opened yourself up to the force and will of the earth, the forest, and the stars. The story isn't all sex magic though. There is some real depiction of horror throughout this book, almost as if it's in direct opposition to how fantastic and magical some of the scenes can be. There is some cold and brutal depictions of death. It really doesn't shy away from the brutality of what life can be living in an unforgiving new colony. Even more so when you consider the social cruelties of living in an extremely conservative Puritan colony. I think this is where the book excels at portraying anxiety and horror. It does an excellent job of conveying the terror of having to always be watching your back because it feels like the entire town is watching your every move. All it takes is one slip up or one person to accuse you of witchery with the smallest shred of evidence, and you could be arrested, tortured, or even killed. Abatha is living with this terror every day, and it's honestly terrifying. From her perspective, being killed quickly would actually be a blessing when you consider some of the ways women were tortured to force a confession of being a witch, and the book does not shy away from those details either. Some of the magical creatures and settings in this book have a real Studio Ghibli Miyazaki vibe to them. The way they're presented and their appearance provide this almost surreal element. Even though they are magical and fantastical, they aren't above or immune to the physics of the world. This gives them some real weight and makes them feel like a real part of the world, and that just rings especially true when they're also struggling with the circumstances of their environment. I knew nothing about Slewfoot going into it, and I ended up absolutely loving it. It's a classic example of American folk magic told through the lens of loss, self-discovery, and revenge. The journey and ultimate growth of our protagonist Abatha is extremely well done, and it's extremely satisfying. So if you're looking for historical fiction with some sensual magic and some social horror, I would check out Slewfoot, A Tale of Bewitchery by Brom.